Well, good morning, everyone. I'm here once again with my colleagues, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response, Jill Dunlop, and the Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation, Greg Rickford, joining us virtually from northwestern Ontario to provide another update on the fire situation here in the province of Ontario. But before we get into that, I do want to acknowledge a very, very challenging situation that is unfolding in British Columbia. I've had an opportunity to speak with Minister Parmar there over the last few days to let him know that our thoughts and prayers here from Ontario, we're sending them their way to the folks who have been impacted by a very devastating situation that, like I said, was unfolding out west. Although we continue to see an active fire season here across Ontario, we are making steady progress with fewer fires burning out of control and more people returning to their communities. So as of this morning, there are 152 active fires across the province. Of those, 12 are not under control at this time. And since our last update, an additional 84, so that's 84 on top of the 80 that we announced just a short week ago, have been declared out, so great news. Over the past month, Ontario has been dealing with a number of complex fires, particularly in the Quetico area, along the Canada-US border, and in Wabakimi, north of Lake Nipigon, following a large-scale lightning storm that passed through the region about a month ago now. So our crews, pilots, emergency responders, and support staff have remained focused on keeping people safe. We have more than 150 Ontario fire crews supported by nearly 100 aircraft, including over 80 helicopters and water bombers, working closely with partners from across Canada and North America. So 100 firefighters, as you know, have arrived from Mexico in northwestern Ontario, and they've been supporting suppression efforts on both the Rinker Lake Fire Complex and the Atikokan Cluster. Both of these fires have seen limited growth in recent weeks, which is excellent news. We've had some very, very helpful weather over the last little while that has helped knock these fires down. So personnel from Manitoba, New Brunswick, PEI, Alberta, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland continue to support the efforts here in Ontario. And we also thank the federal government and the Yukon for the aircraft and personnel that they have provided as well. So over the coming days and weeks, Ontario will likely see some of our partners start to reposition their resources back to their home regions, and I do know that we've also had some that have gone back home already to Alberta in particular, have now been repositioned out to British Columbia. So while we're not in the clear here in Ontario yet, we are confident that we have the crews and the aircraft that we need to get the job done. So the progress we're making in containing these fires is allowing some implementation and evacuation orders to be lifted, which is great news, so that communities are able to get back home. And I want to be clear, changes to these orders are made on the best advice of our fire behavior experts and only when a fire no longer poses a threat to a community. I know that it's been difficult for families and business owners who have been affected by these orders. We want everyone to be able to return home as soon as it is safe to do so. My ministry is also conducting assessment flights to document property damage and loss. Impacted property owners can contact 211 to receive information from our ministry staff and support on the next steps. So while we are seeing fewer fire starts, our work does not end here, and I want to thank all the fire crews, pilots, engineers, mechanics, technicians, and support staff who have played a pivotal role in our fire response. Your dedication to public safety has kept people and communities safe, and I'd now like to turn it over to Minister Dunlop from the Ministry of Emergency Preparedness and Response to give us an update on evacuations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Harris. First, I want to say my heart goes out to everyone in BC affected by the devastating wildland fires there. It's a sobering reminder of how quickly these fires can escalate. Here in Ontario, I want to extend my sincere thanks to all the emergency management professionals working hard to coordinate evacuation and support communities as residents return home. Everyone is working closely to ensure evacuees have what they need to be as comfortable as possible during this distressing time. I'd also like to give a big thank you to the wildland firefighters working tirelessly to get the fires under control. We know this is extremely challenging work, and we are so grateful for your efforts. I will now provide an update on the support the Ministry of Emergency Preparedness and Response is providing to communities affected by the wildland fires and ongoing evacuation efforts. The Provincial Emergency Operations Centre remains fully activated, with dedicated staff working around the clock to support impacted communities and coordinate provincial assistance. As of August 11th, 14 communities have been evacuated, 6 communities have returned home, and 1 community is in the process of returning their members home. Approximately 1,150 evacuees remain in host communities across the province. And once again, thank you to all the host communities for stepping up to help in this time of need. I recognize that being displaced is challenging for individuals and families alike, and I want to reiterate that our government is committed to supporting affected communities for as long as needed. We have activated significant provincial resources to respond to the situation. To date, we have held 113 coordination calls with First Nation chiefs and community leaders, emergency management partners, municipalities, the federal government, and other emergency management partners. Proactively stood up reception centres in Thunder Bay and Dryden to ensure they are ready should they be required. Delivered 312 air purifiers, 5 air scrubbers, and 84 replacement filters to help 5 First Nation communities remain in their communities. Deployed Ontario Corps partners, including Feed Ontario and the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres, to transport and distribute food, Global Medic to deliver critical supplies to the reception centres, and Ontario 211 to respond to non-emergency inquiries related to the wildland fires. As well, we have deployed Ontario Corps volunteers in Thunder Bay to help sort donations for evacuees. Our government is mobilizing every available tool and resource to support communities during this difficult time. Once again, thank you to all of our emergency management partners, including First Nation chiefs and community leadership, municipalities, the federal government, and Ontario Corps partners and volunteers for their ongoing cooperation and support. Thank you, merci miigwech, and I'll now hand it over to Minister Rickford.
Thank you, Minister Dunlop, and my remarks will be brief. I just want to echo the statements made by my colleagues here and assure folks across the province that our operations center has remained fully activated and engaged 24/7. It's been a trying time for sure, but as Minister Harris said, we've been blessed out here in Northwestern Ontario with the kind of weather that has helped suppress fires. We remain out here in the far parts of Northwestern Ontario in full appreciation of the Quetico Park situation. Obviously, at its worst, had one of the communities in my political district evacuated, but repatriation is ongoing and the communities are feeling more settled here. But my cabinet colleagues and I most recently have redoubled our efforts to stay in touch with First Nations communities and provincial territorial organizations. These are led by regional chiefs and emergency management partners, supporting agencies and federal counterparts. My ministry plays a supportive role and complements effectively Minister Dunlop's ministry and their activities to understand the evolving needs of communities and respond with detailed and nuanced supports that are needed. This earlier manifests itself in pre-evacuation and evacuation, but I can speak to what's going on more frequently now, and that's repatriation. It's incredibly stressful, and we remain engaged on the ground through text, through phone calls, and the likes to make sure that details as communities come back to their homes. It can be quite unsettling. So to that end, I actually want to give a shout out to many community members, frankly, who take up positions in their own communities to coordinate every element or every aspect of the process involved in a community's response. From pre-evacuation to evacuation and repatriation. I know what you folks do. I know how busy you've been, and I want to thank you and some of those folks I've had a chance to speak with, and again provide more nuanced and detailed support. So for our part out here in Northwestern Ontario, things can change on a dime, but it's trending the right way, and it's a credit to the leadership of my ministerial colleagues here today, the first responders, and communities, frankly, and residents of Northern Ontario banding together to try to make and create the best circumstances possible for communities most impacted from the various stages of the impact a fire can have on their communities. I think with that, I'll just stand down and happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you for this opportunity.
We will now take questions from the media. Could you please come up to the mic and state your name and outlet? And just a reminder that the format is one question and one follow-up. First question.
Minister Harris, how does this fire season compare to last year or say the previous 5 or 10 years, year to date?
Yeah, from a year-to-date perspective, obviously from a hectares burned, I think that's generally kind of how things get measured. Obviously, we're way surpassing what we've seen previously. We have the largest fire on record here in Ontario, which at its biggest was around 350,000 hectares. So to put that into perspective, that's about 350,000 football fields. It's pretty substantial. A couple of years ago, we had Red Lake 12, I believe, was around 160,000. That was one of our biggest, so it's almost doubled that size. So thankfully, we've now seen that fire actually shrink. It's shrunk by almost 60,000 hectares at this point, which is really good. The teams have done a lot of work to contain the sort of the north and eastern boundaries of it. We still have a couple of other large fires burning in the Dryden area, Quetico Park being one of them, again around 40 to 50,000 hectares. So certainly from a hectares burn perspective, we've seen a lot. From a fire starts perspective, it hasn't been all that abnormal, to be honest. What really kind of got us, I guess, kind of behind, if you will, is that storm that came through now about 4 weeks ago, almost to the day, and touched off, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30 fires that grew very, very quickly. And unfortunately, some of them were obviously very close to communities. So when you look at the weather in the Northwest at the time was somewhere in the neighborhood of the high 30s to low 40 degrees, plus the wind and sustained drying. It was just a recipe for disaster, kind of a perfect storm scenario, if you will. So, we're always mindful of looking at data. I think it's important to be able to see sort of where we've been and where we're going. There's obviously lots to do as we move forward over the next couple of months. Hopefully we'll continue to see some more favorable weather like we have over the last little while, and we can try and keep things as under control as possible.
So I know you mentioned property damage. Are
Yes.
there any very preliminary estimates on what you're looking at?
Not at this time. Obviously, our main priority right now is trying to assess as much as we can. Smoke makes it difficult to see, obviously, from the air, and does make it difficult. A lot of these places are very remote as well, so having some of our fire rangers or folks on the ground being able to assess isn't always easy to get them in there. So we've been doing a lot of those assessment flights as we can over the last little while. Now that things have calmed down a little bit, of course, we don't want to deploy resources to away from the frontline fire efforts. So with things calming down a little bit, we've had that ability. Obviously, we all know the situation with Collins. It's terrible, heartbreaking. We're working really closely with them right now to actually restore the road back to the landing on the lake into the community. We've had M&R engineers out there to do some work on that first bridge, see what we can do to try and expedite construction and get folks being able to get back there and assess that community. We've also have some camps, tourist operators, different folks like that, that we're working with to try and get them back as well to assess damages. So ongoing efforts, and we're putting our best foot forward there.
Minister, if you had suggested you have 1,100 people that are still evacuated at this point. You're doing everything you can to support those communities, and you've had the many calls that you've had. I'm just curious, beyond providing a place to stay, offering them the clothes that they might need, what kind of other supports are being offered? For instance, mental health supports that they might need in those situations.
Yes, absolutely, and that's part of evacuation going to a host city, is ensuring that there is adequate health care in that community to support additional evacuees coming to a host city. The wraparound services, those activities for children. Like I've been on site in some of the host cities at the hotels. Met with family members who are there. So it's ensuring that all the wraparound supports are there for a community at that time to ensure that it's not just the clothes on their back when they're coming into a community, but that they are, have those services and supports available for them during that difficult time.
There's still so much anger and frustration about how late the warning came for some of these communities. The NDP is calling for a public inquiry. What do you say to that, and also to those community members who are still really angry with your government?
Yeah, I think we have to understand that when we look back 4 weeks ago, like I said, almost today, with the amount of fires that started in a very short time frame, we were already fighting fires in the province. And then working with sort of our regional directors and looking at different things through fire headquarters, trying to track those fires, the new starts. We had some that started very, very close to community, which makes it extremely challenging. When these fires start, the smoke plumes that come off of them are substantial, and it's not always easy to get folks, A, on the ground, because as I had said before, some of these areas are quite remote, but B, it makes it very difficult to fly planes safely. So from an evacuation perspective, obviously we try and give as much warning as we possibly can, and I think that's one of the things that we really want to press upon communities. If you see fires starting and you're able to evacuate, you should do it. You don't necessarily have to wait for the M&R or the government to come in and say, you better get out. Folks on the landscape know their communities better than anybody else. So again, there's been some heartbreaking scenarios. It's awful. It's truly awful. But at the same time, from a Ministry of Natural Resources perspective, we've done, in my estimation, and of course we'll look back and we do after action reports after every season to look and see where things worked well, where we can do better, and we'll continue to do that.
I might just add that there have been some suggestions by First Nations leadership brought to us that will be part of those considerations, and we appreciate to Minister Harris's point. These are the communities on the ground that stare these situations down, and there's always a period after the fire season is over where we continue to build out best practices through all three ministries, but frankly a government enterprise-wide approach, and I think we appreciate some of the proposals brought forward already by First Nations communities who've chosen a different path of communication to myself or the other ministers. Some of them are very detailed and others more broad that we think will be useful in our contemplation. Say, Minister Harris.
Minister Rickford, earlier you had talked about how on the ground what you're hearing is it's a very stressful situation. What are you finding? What is the most stressful part for people? Well,
if they've been evacuated, you literally leave your home as it was. And coming back, there's Minister Dunlop's ministry and mine have been involved in everything from, supplying dog food to communities that have been completely evacuated. These families return home to either empty fridges or fridges that had food in it, for example. And so, as I said earlier, it's these kinds of nuanced things that we try to work through with the communities and our federal government partners to try to make that go as smoothly as possible. If you can imagine a community very isolated, forced to leave very quickly. There's a lot of unfinished life business there in the community that is still there and perhaps had deteriorated for one reason or another. So repatriation, is a stressful event, and providing supports, in particular mental health supports, for the community as they kind of wrap their head around how to restart their lives, I think is a significant piece of the work that we're looking to enhance with communities, particularly those that were gone for extended periods.
For Minister Harris, can you clarify your comments earlier? You said that communities don't necessarily have to wait for the MNR or the governments to come in and say to get out. Are you effectively suggesting that folks should contemplate that they might be on their own here, or
no, not at all. Not at all. So if you have a fire that has started very close to your community, where you can see the flames, you know things are coming towards you, and you have an opportunity to be able to egress either by boat, by rail, by car, depending on where you're located across the province, I think it would be fairly prudent to say that you should do that. We will still, of course, be there to support as quickly as we can mobilize and move assets across the province. But it's imperative that safety is the number one priority, right? Safety is the number one priority. So far, thankfully, we have had no loss of life, which is extremely important. Obviously, again, heart breaks for those communities, those businesses that has lost camps or folks that have lost cottages, personal belongings, their homes. It's absolutely terrible. But at the same time, no loss of life. It's extremely important to remember. And again, if you have a safe opportunity to get out, you should take that opportunity. But as I've said, the M&R will be there. We will always be there. We will do everything we can to try and keep those communities safe as we move forward.
In terms of the supports for communities that maybe self-evacuate as you're, or individuals, households that self-evacuate as you're describing here, is the M&R pledging to kind of support people with their travel expenses, their accommodation expenses if they choose to evacuate without an official order?
Yeah, so that might be a better question for Minister Dunlop, but I'll just say what we do often is we do help coordinate some of that movement as well. Like if there's an opportunity to get folks self-evacuated to maybe a certain point where they can then be picked up by an M&R asset, whether that be a helicopter, a plane. I know that in past years we've organized buses and other various modes of transportation, but I think that's probably a question better suited for Minister Dunlop.
No, that's a good point. So in evacuations where they're coordinated and communities are flying out to a host city, that's one situation. But for self-evacuations, that's why we set up the centre in Dryden and Thunder Bay as well. So we had Ontario Corps partners on the ground in those communities setting up cots, and there was food available, wraparound services at those locations as well, so that communities who were self-evacuating or even some of the cottagers who were maybe evacuating from their area had a place to go. So that is supported by the provincial government.
This will be the last question.
In 2021, the Shawnee Osseo Nation presented Ontario with an 82-page plan to support Northern Ontario during fires or emergencies like this. They identified gaps. Why hasn't the province acted on that plan?
So I think there's been a lot that has been implemented. Like you've heard from Minister Rickford, myself, and Minister Dunlop, we have constant conversations with First Nations leaders across Ontario, whether that be right from the grassroots level in community all the way up to your regional grand chiefs. So there have been, even this year, a lot of interesting sort of information that's been put forward. And like I had said earlier, folks on the landscape that are living in these communities know their communities the best. So we're consistently working with them to build out better values protection, look at sprinklering systems. I think that's something that's going to be quite evident as we come out of, we'll say, this year's fire season, looking at ways that we can partner with communities to build that out a little bit better. Heavy equipment, fire breaks, how do you utilize lakes or natural features to be able to slow the fires down? So I think there's a lot of great things that have come out of the conversations that we've been having, quite frankly, for decades. And we'll continue to take that advice and look at how we can build out a better system as we move forward.
That concludes today's press conference. Thank you.
Calls to change the pay structure for these wildland firefighters.
Sure.
Are you looking at that?
Yeah, so some great news over the last year. We've been able to come to some agreements with our pilots and also our aircraft maintenance technicians, so their compensation structure has been changed. We have now made our crew leaders, who are sort of the crew boss or the person who's in charge of that 4 or 5 person crew, those positions are now permanent. And they actually have again, a different compensation structure as well, so that we're able to recruit and retain those people to keep that knowledge. When we look at what happens with your sort of average everyday wildland firefighter, there's always conversations happening to see what we can do better. One of the challenges that we do have from a crew permanency perspective is that a lot of these folks are students, right? So they're going back to school in the fall. So we get them, we train them, we go through all of the steps, early on in the spring. Many of them are returning. Many of them have done this for years. So from a training perspective, that eases the burden a little bit, and then we're able to have them work with us through the summer into the early fall, and then many of them are back to school. So I think there's a lot of great things we've been able to achieve. Obviously, we've ordered 5 new water bombers as well that will be coming online over the next few years. We're also in the process of procuring 6 new helicopters, medium-duty helicopters. So there's a lot of good things that have come over the last, I'm going to say, year to year and a half when it comes to wildland fire management here in the province. And like I said, and you've heard the Premier say it too, we will spare no expense to make sure that we keep people safe here in the province. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. Much appreciated. Thank you.
That concludes our press conference. Thank you.